Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to another episode of Life with Shenita. I am Shenita Connolly, and I am grateful to have you join us this evening for another show that is going to be life changing. As many of you all know, the goal for Life with Shenita is to help people overcome life's challenges and to encourage them to live a vibrant life beyond what they've experienced or are experiencing. So, if you would like and share this broadcast this evening, I am so excited to have my friend on tonight. And so I'm going to bring him in just a moment. But Chief Judge Steven Teske is my guest tonight, and we're going to talk about juvenile laws. So here comes the judge shortly, and I'm going to introduce him to you all. And we're going to have a wonderful conversation that's going to be a game changer in the lives of so many people. So if you all would like and share the broadcast, that would be absolutely amazing. Like and share the broadcast. So without further delay, I am going to bring Judge Teske in. Good evening, Judge Teske.
Oh, good evening, Shenita.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Thank you. I hope you are as well.
I am doing exceptionally well. Excited to have this conversation with you, and I want to introduce you formally to the audience. So if you would just hold tight while I take this time and introduce you so that people will know exactly who they are hearing from. So I have a narrative to introduce you from. Steven C. Teske, Chief Presiding Judge, Juvenile and Family Court, Clayton Judicial Circuit, the state of Georgia. Judge Steven Teske is the Chief Judge of Juvenile Court of Clayton County, Georgia. He was appointed juvenile court judge in 1999 and also serves as a Superior Court judge by designation, presiding over civil and criminal matters. Teske has testified before Congress on 4 occasions and several state legislatures on detention reform, zero tolerance policies in schools, juvenile justice reform, juvenile justice grant accountability, and juvenile justice delinquency prevention act reauthorization. Teske served as a legit, I'm sorry, litigative expert for the U.S. Department of Justice in the school to prison pipeline case, United States of America versus Meridian L. et al., resulting in a landmark consent decree mandating sweeping reform of school disciplinary practices that were harmful to kids of color. The governor has appointed him to the Children and Youth Coordinating Council, Governor's Office for Children and Families, DJJ Judicial Advisory Council, JDAI Statewide Steering Committee, Georgia Commission on Family Violence, and the Georgia Criminal Justice Reform Commission. He served 2 terms on the Federal Advisory Committee for Juvenile Justice and is immediate past national chair of the Coalition for Juvenile Justice. He is a member of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges and has served on the board of directors. He is the past president of the Georgia Council of Juvenile Court Judges and the Clayton County Bar Association. He has written several articles on juvenile justice reform, including his model on school justice partnerships, published in the Juvenile and Family Law Journal, Journal of Children and Adolescent Psychiatric Nursing, Juvenile Justice and Family Today, Family Court Review, Georgia Law Review, and the Georgia Bar Journal. His book, Reform Juvenile Justice Now, is a collection of essays on juvenile justice issues. Judge Teske is the 2018 recipient of the Juvenile Law Center Leadership Prize Award. He has received numerous awards and recognitions, including Romay T. Powell Award from the Juvenile Court Association of Georgia, Clayton County NAACP Community Service Award, Howard K. Abels Award from the Georgia Juvenile Services Association, 2013 Alumni Award of the College of Arts and Sciences at Georgia State University, Distinguished Alumni Award of Clayton State University, and the Outstanding Leadership Award from the Georgia Association of Homes and Services for Children. He is a Toll Fellow of the Council of State Governments and received his JD, MA, and BIS degrees from Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. Judge Teske is an adjunct law professor at John Marshall Law School in Atlanta, Georgia. He is a husband and a father and an incredible person, as you guys just heard. So I botched up that bio a little bit, and I need you to fix up where I messed
Oh,
up.
you're fine, Shenita. You did very, very well. Yeah.
Thank you.
It,
So
that
welcome.
that is a hard word, by the way. Litigative. Yeah.
Litigative. Thank
Yeah.
you.
That is a hard word.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for fixing that for me. So
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you. It's great to
I
be
am
here.
honored to have you here tonight, and I'd like for you to share just a little bit about yourself with the audience, other than what they've just heard. If you want to just share.
Yeah. I think generally speaking, um, my my involvement, okay, nationally that you just heard really comes from, um, the very deep inside of who I am, how I was raised. Um, I early on in my life, my parents, made sure I was introduced to people of diversity, um, and that helped me to understand that while cultures are different, there are core values that we all share.
Mhm,
Okay, and that's what makes us humanity.
mhm,
And it was also um, why when I was, my wife and I were raising our kids, and as a judge, and there was a question among other judges, well, we sentence people, we do things, and there's a reason why we have sheriff deputies in our courtroom or transport us to public events and potential threats and about and so there are some judges who decide to put their kids in private school. Okay.
mhm,
um, my wife and I decided not to do that because we did not want to deprive our kids of the skill set of communication, of understanding humanity and the differences in among cultures, but most important of all, knowing that there are those core values that make us all human, that we can all live together regardless of whatever differences that we might have. Okay, whether they're socioeconomic, whether they're race or ethnicity, whether it's of course gender,
mhm,
even LGBTQ, sexual orientation, people, regardless, we all deserve to pursue happiness. And we owe it to each other, okay, to ensure that everyone has that opportunity. And we don't need to be the ones to be the obstacle to that. And
mhm,
I believe that my kids today, like myself, um, you know, show affection, show love, show kindness, show compassion to everybody, regardless of where they are in life, who they are in life, all because they were exposed to that diversity. So I just want to share that part of me.
Mhm. I love that.
Yeah, that doesn't always come out in a
Hmm.
narrative. I mean, you could probably glean from it because I've done so much work in
Yes,
how to helping communities to reduce racial disparities, especially that's important these days with social justice as it is.
absolutely. You wanted your children to be inclusive instead of excluded from
Absolutely,
certain, yeah. And
absolutely.
so that's amazing. I commend you all for that. You have, I think, a daughter who teaches. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, she's up in the Gwinnett County school system. She's a
Hmm.
master librarian. She's just smart as can be and is
Hmm.
very innovative. She's just so well balanced, and in the school she's in is in a very diverse community with where the minority is the majority, both African American and Hispanic.
Hmm. That's awesome.
And she speaks Spanish, by the way.
Really?
Okay, yeah, no, and I have to tell your audience this story real quick. Okay,
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
right.
Hmm.
Where they live, okay, which has a heavy Hispanic population.
Hmm.
Well, she's married to uh, to a gentleman. He's Mexican,
Hmm.
and Javier, and last name is Espinoza.
Hmm.
And so he's driving, and they pull up into Wendy's to the drive-through. Well, there at the window is a Latina. Okay, she look when you look at my son-in-law, there's no doubt he's Mexican.
Right.
Okay, all right. So she sees him. What does she do? She starts speaking Spanish. Well, he's like, no Espanol. Okay, all right. And his parents regret that they did not teach him Spanish. But my daughter leans over him, starts speaking fluent Spanish, and all he could hear was one word, understand one word, for coming from his wife's mouth, gringo.
And
Okay,
that,
that's the term that Hispanics call white people. Okay, which is not the nice term. Okay, all right. But what she said, what was if translated, she says, "How funny! He's Mexican, doesn't speak Spanish, but the gringo does."
and they connected.
Yeah, they connected.
And here they are, husband and
Yeah.
wife, living this life together.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. Diversity.
Yeah.
He was introduced to diversity. So with that being said, let's open up with the icebreaker.
Okay.
So if you had to describe the color pink, as they can see, to a blind person, how would you describe that color?
You know, I I I have to say this. That first, I would think, well, what is it that blind people do know? Okay, what is their language? Speaking of diversity, it's
Hmm.
about putting ourselves in the shoes of other people,
Hmm.
and then when we begin to see life in the world through their eyes, we begin to understand them.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
and therefore we become less judgmental, right?
Yes.
Okay, so think about people who are blind. Okay, um, you know, they're not blind to touch.
No,
They're
they're
not
not.
blind to smell.
Mm-mm.
They're not blind to emotions, and so
Hmm.
on and so on.
Hmm.
So I would describe it to them in those ways that they know, that
Hmm.
they understand. So let's say, what do I think about pink? Okay, you know, I would start with the emotions. Okay, and I would say, the color pink is a color that makes me feel loving and safe. Okay, um, you know, let's talk about taste. I would say, pink is like chewing on bubble gum, the flavor, or a lollipop flavor. Okay. Or let's talk about touch or feel. I
Hmm.
would say, think about the petals of flowers. That's pink.
Hmm.
That's how I would describe pink.
I love it. And I'm sure they would be very confident in knowing exactly what color you were describing. Those are great, great answers. I love it. Great description. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So let's jump right into this conversation about
Okay.
juvenile law. I've had the conversation with a few parents over the last few months about their children understanding the laws. And as you know, I love education, and I've been in this world for a minute, working with you since 2003, 2004 in Clayton County with the diversion program through
Mhm.
Clayton County Extension that we started. And you still run today and have expanded and doing amazing work. And so tell us about juvenile law as you know it and as you would want someone else to know it and understand it from a parental perspective. So if a parent is watching this show and they're trying to make sure that their children understand the law, can you kind of explain that to them?
Sure, sure. I would, from a global perspective, let me just say, and as everyone heard, that I'm an adjunct law professor,
Hmm.
and I do teach juvenile law to law students. Okay,
Hmm.
and the first thing that we talk about is the origins of the juvenile court and juvenile law or juvenile justice. Over the years has gone through a lot of cycles. Okay, um, and we are now coming off of or transitioning away from what has been the most punitive era of juvenile justice. Okay, and in fact, it's called the punitive era. And the punitive era really began. There's some questions about when it began, but sometime probably transitioning from the 70s to the 80s. Okay, it came in during the Reagan administration with his war on drugs, and because there was so much rhetoric then about zero tolerance
Hmm.
policies.
Hmm.
And when we talk, when the country is bombarded with a particular philosophy, it tends to unfortunately bleed into other areas of life as well. And that's what happened is it started bleeding into the juvenile sentencing, and it really crushed it in 1994, 95, when there was this unfortunate term that was published by a political science professor at Yale University, and unfortunately picked up by somebody that you would least expect her to do it, and that's Hillary Clinton. And that was the super predator youth syndrome, where this political science said that based on the data that there is going to be an onslaught of super predator youth who are basically going to rape and pillage our communities. Now, the sad thing about this is what they were really talking about, and is our black youth. Okay, they didn't say it, but we all know it's had dog whistle politics. You know, we, basically, um, people with racial bias, they've just gotten smarter, by changing their tactics, and but not using words like black folks or dropping the use of the N word. Okay, you know, and so that's what was really, that was and black people then knew exactly because they're the ones who were targeted, and they knew exactly. It's just like the voting rights stuff right now.
Hmm.
Okay, it's the same by way of analogy. Okay, it sounds good to be able to talk about, voter integrity.
Hmm.
Okay, but what you're really, come on, folks, don't lie to me.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is about disenfranchising the black vote.
Hmm.
You're just making it sound pretty.
Right.
Okay, now I'm sorry, I don't want to go down a rabbit with this, so I'm going to answer your question. Okay, but I want to start off there that the good news is that many jurisdictions across the country are now transitioning away from the punitive. Clayton County led the way back in the early 2000s, as you recall, Shenita, because you and I work closely together. Okay, and and which is why I've testified before Congress 4 times, and many state legislatures going in there as an expert, and why the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division use me as a consultant on civil rights matters. Okay, it's because of it all begins with the work that I did in reform on our local system. Okay, so this is important. If the parents who are listening to me are from Clayton County, then the news is good.
Hmm.
Okay, because there is still some justice by zip code. Okay, so let me give you one example of what I'm talking about and what parents need to know. First of all, kids are kids.
Hmm.
Okay, kids are prone to risk-taking behavior.
Yes, they
The,
are.
the prefrontal lobe of their brain, okay, uh, it translates emotion into logic. That's the part of the brain that helps us figure out conflict, resolve conflict. Okay, but
Hmm.
here's the problem. The reason why kids are prone to risk-taking behaviors, and quite frankly, they're neurologically wired to do stupid things,
Right.
okay, is because this is not developed in boys until age 25 and in girls until age 23. Okay. Now, I want you to step back and think about this. That means we have to ask ourselves this question, especially people like me,
Hmm.
who's dedicated to helping young people. And that is, well, if their brain is still under neurological construction, then where do we want them to be?
Hmm.
More importantly, where do we don't want them to be?
Absolutely.
That's why I am big on detention reform.
Hmm.
That's why all those folks out there, and you may have some in the audience, I don't know your audience, okay, that, they're tough on crime and these kids aren't going to, figure it out unless we show them and we, put them in jail, let them see what it's like. Well, you're wrong,
Hmm.
okay? Detention for youth should only be reserved for the very few who present a risk of serious bodily injury to somebody, okay? But see, the vast majority of kids, the data, the research for years and years and years shows that most kids age out of their delinquency. The problem with many of our juvenile justice systems is that they don't let kids do that. They bring them deeper into the system and they make them worse because then they introduce them to the real kids who are delinquent, you see.
Hmm.
So here's the proof. So you might be saying, well, Teske, how do you know that? I'll call you, yeah, you've been a judge for 22 years. You've testified as an expert many times and da 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 da. Well, the reason I've testified as an expert is because, well, the data backs me up.
Hmm.
Okay. Let me give an example. Based on early research done, the reason I focused on the school system as the center focus for reducing juvenile crime,
Hmm.
okay, is this. Because the more kids you graduate from school, the fewer juveniles will be committing crimes, right? Even common sense dictates that.
Hmm.
The question is, how do you get more kids to graduate? And come to find out, when the researchers came in and broke up all our numbers and took a look at it through all these types of studies called regression analysis and so forth, this is what they found out. They found out that what happened in Clayton County is that we stopped all these exclusionary disciplinary rules. We stopped arresting so many kids on campus. We stopped suspending so many kids on campus, okay? Because the research shows that kids who are arrested on campus are twice as likely to drop out of school. And if they appear in court, they're 4 times more likely to drop out of school. And when they drop out of school, they're more likely to commit juvenile crimes, okay? So the bottom line is, as of today, our school arrests are down 95%. Okay. All right. But you might think there's chaos. No. Guess what? The graduation rates since 2003 have been going up every single year.
Hmm.
I don't mean plateauing, every single
Hmm.
year.
Hmm.
Okay. So between the years of 2003 and 2011, when the feds changed the graduation reporting formula, which used to be um, um, at any time. In other words, that is it's called overall. It didn't matter how long it took for you to graduate. If you graduate, you were able to count them as successful. But in 2011, the U.S. Department of Education stopped that. They said, no, it has to be on what's called on-time graduation rates. That is the four-year adjusted cohort. So you started in the ninth grade, you can only count the kids who graduated the 12th
Those
grade
4 years.
4 years later. Okay. Well, everyone's graduation rates dropped that year. So that's a static factor. That didn't get to count. But between 2003 and 2011, our graduation rates increased 24%. Okay. But guess what? It's graduated even the same since then,
Mhm,
on time.
mhm, mhm,
You could imagine then if our graduation rates have continued to increase on time. I wonder what the overall looks like now.
mhm, mhm.
It's probably in the 90s.
Yeah.
Okay. So we now have more kids, especially kids of color, because of our population,
Mhm,
who are either going on to college,
mhm,
they're going on to a career path,
mhm.
are now leading a more successful life than they would have otherwise. You know why? Because I, in the school system, with the
Are
police department, okay, all of us together work to keep kids out of my system that didn't need to be in my system. And
absolutely.
we came up with other alternatives.
Mhm,
Okay. So for you parents out there who sometimes come to my door and knock on it and say, I want you to lock my son up because he's unruly, don't do that. Because I have parents in the early days when I would kind of let them tug on my heart and yeah, I would do it, would then call me later, complain, I wish I'd listened to you, Judge, because now he's getting telephone calls from a gangbanger that he met in the detention center. And now he's getting even worse. So be careful how we treat our kids. Parents,
mhm.
be careful how we respond to our kids. Don't pull the trigger. If you use a hammer all the time, then you're always going to see your son or daughter as a nail.
Mm, that's good. Mm, that's good. Wow. And so programs that are
Mhm.
available in Clayton County Juvenile Court, can you share what's available or
Yeah, yeah. So there. Okay, first of all, this is how it works. We, unlike most courts, we don't turn kids away when parents bring them to our intake, and you know, most other courts will say, well, you need to call the police, or you need to have so that they can file a delinquent petition on them or something like that. Then we can talk about what to do. Well, that's ridiculous.
Mhm,
Okay, it's ridiculous because if I really don't want your kid coming into my system, then I need to be proactive and provide those services before there would be a need for a petition in order to avoid the need for a petition to be filed. Okay. So the philosophy at my court is that, mom, dad, if you're out there, right, and your kid is unruly and you don't know what to do, you know, um, it's okay to bring your kid down the court. Now, we're not going to have you file an unruly petition. It's called a child in need of services or a delinquent petition. Instead, we're going to see what we already have in the court in our restorative justice division that could be worked, but we also can refer you to places that would directly deal with that. And particularly keep in mind cost because many of our parents can't afford therapists and counselors and some of these
mhm,
programs that we provide to our truly delinquent youth
mhm,
that are evidence-based programs
mhm,
such as cognitive behavioral therapy and multi-systemic therapy and family functional therapy and the 7 challenges and moral recognition therapy. These are all programs. A lot of people wonder, well, what does juvenile probation do? Well, probation, no, we are not the punitive type. We're the treatment type. These are kids. We're trying to help them develop their brains. And so we strategically identify them the programs that they need. If there's a family issue, there's some family dysfunction going on, which typically there is with
there he
kids
is.
delinquent, then we use family functional therapy or multi-systemic therapy, right?
Mhm,
Okay, we treat the whole family, not just the kid. All right.
right.
The kid may be having trouble with attitudes, values, and beliefs. It may have them all screwed up. Some of it may come from the dysfunctional family, not getting the learning, parents pointing things out. Why, not that it's good, this is bad, but why is it bad? Why would this be good? Okay.
Mhm.
So I think that latter part tends to be what is missed in raising up our kids is say, instead of saying what, we're not saying, well, why is what?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Exactly.
and so we'll do moral recognition therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps them see the world differently. Okay, all right,
Mhm.
in a more positive way. But back to the parents who are having issues. I will say one thing we have in Clayton County that our people go to frequently because they now provide all the brokerage services as well in the community, and that's the Clayton County System of Care. Okay, so the Clayton County System of Care is dedicated to young people, okay, and families in connecting them to services to help address the needs of their children. Okay, and you can look it up on you can Google the Clayton County System of Care and get their information that way. Deborah Stone is the executive director, and I've known her for a long time. And they do a very, very good job in providing services. And we're seeing more communities, particularly in urban areas, who are going to the same type of model, which is a brokerage model where instead of the court providing direct services, because there's such a need and because the court should be finding ways to keep kids from coming in, so we want to be proactive, then courts are getting involved in helping to create these nonprofits. This is what we did in 2010. Me and former school superintendent Lavinia Jackson,
Yes.
my wife Cheryl, who you know very well,
Hmm.
Shenita, she was
Yep.
she's a grant writer, okay, and
Hmm.
so the three of us together formed this nonprofit, okay, and and so and Miss Jackson, the first time she retired before she became school superintendent, was the first executive director of it, okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so it's continued to evolve, and now Deborah Stone. So Lavinia was the first executive director, then Cheryl, and then Deborah, and then Brenda Rayburn, who's the former executive director of Habitat for Humanity here on the South Side, and then my and then Deborah Stone.
Hmm.
And and everyone has made contributions that evolve it to where it is today. But many jurisdictions are beginning to move to that. They're beginning to read the best practices and saying we need to do something proactive to keep kids out of court and get services in the community for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's good. That's good. I actually went out there and found the website and the phone number. So I'm hoping that people will jot this down as a resource because, as you said, this is a resource in the community available. So we need to take advantage of that. So thank you for sharing that as well. And I remember when we did the diversion program at that time, back in 2003, the crime rate was really, really high.
It was very high.
So
So you know what it is now, Shanita?
what is it?
It's down 80%.
Wow, that's amazing.
Uh-huh.
It,
Yeah.
that's what prompted me to start Youth Under Construction is because, I thought about the character, the lack thereof of positive character traits. And you're right. Sometimes it's a result of dysfunctional families. And so
Hmm.
we have to take care of the whole unit sometimes, not just
Right.
the child, because if we take care of the child, send the child back into the environment, then there may not
It's
be
counterproductive.
counterproductive. Absolutely. So I appreciate those resources. I just appreciate the work that you've done over the years, especially with, like you said, Miss Lavinia Jackson.
Hmm.
She
Yeah.
was, and I mean, you guys were like two peas in a pod.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were on it, to make a difference, to make an impact, particularly in the school system.
And we're still working together, she and I. Even though she's in retirement, she assists me in consulting and helping other systems around the country build a school justice partnership like ours.
Wow, that's incredible. Please
Yeah,
say hello to her.
I will. In fact, she texted me today, and I've just been real busy. I haven't texted her back, so I'm going to give her a call and I'll let her know. But by the way, my school justice partnership model is now replicated in 41 states.
Out of 52,
Yep,
41 states.
41 states.
You have been a busy man.
Yeah, it's been, and it's been also with the help of the Annie Casey Foundation, who has provided travel expense funding to get me and my team out to these places where we spend 2 days with them. And I have a toolkit, that I built, and that over the 2 days we work them through the toolkit to end up with them developing an agreement between the school system, the police, and the courts on how they're going to reduce school-based arrests and what they're going to do in lieu of those arrests.
I love it. I mean, I'm just so proud of you and just proud to know you because I've watched this journey. Now you getting ready to retire in a couple of months and you get to do this full time.
Yes.
That's,
Yes.
I mean, that's just a beautiful scenario.
That's how I want to go out of this life, is doing all that stuff full time.
Yes.
And it's been good. In the courtroom, the way that my style is, people will tell you who work around me and work in the courtroom with me, oh, don't be surprised if when Judge Teske steps down from the bench and takes the robe off and sits down next to the kid,
Yep.
okay, and just starts having a conversation, because I believe that people, both parents as well as the kids, I have greater success in them complying with my orders because of the relationship I build with them in the courtroom and the time that I spend with them. And there's actually studies that are done. It's called procedural fairness. And if y'all can Google that, procedural fairness, particularly Tom Tyler, he's a professor of law at Yale University.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of the father of this, but there's 4 points to it, but and this is what I have applied in my courtroom, okay, and it can also be applied to law enforcement. In fact, I believe that the best response, okay, to to bring social justice, okay, into the law enforcement community is through the concept of procedural fairness. Okay, procedural fairness is about giving people voice, listening to their concerns, showing respect, okay, and due process. All right. So let me give you an example. So I've had this conversation with police officers in classrooms, okay, where I'll ask, how many of you, when you pulled a car over, the driver blamed you for pulling them over because they're driving while black? So you have some hands go up. I said, now I'm not going to ask you how you responded to it, but let me give you a suggestion on how you should respond to it. And I hope you would try it the next time. When they do that, the first thing you should say to them is, I am so sorry, sir or ma'am, that you've been pulled over for that reason. I know that it happens and it's wrong. And I just want to take a moment just to let you know that. Now, what you're doing at that point is you're validating what has been their experience. Don't argue with them, because you can't argue with the truth. Now, it may not be true that you particularly did it for that reason. So that's why the next statement should be, okay, now let me tell you why I pulled you over. Okay. But it also, am I teaching it this way for the officers in the room? It gets them to think about, I wonder, did I really pull him over because he's black? Okay. All right. And so anyway, these are the things that I believe that in my style of building relationships, and particularly me for being a white male in an overwhelmingly African-American county, it is my responsibility in putting myself in the shoes of my African-American friends, they're my citizens, okay, is that given their experiences, when I get to hear them, because when I go to sit down and I'm talking to these parents and they begin to open up and they share me their stories, okay, that's how I learn,
Mm-hmm.
okay, as a white man,
Mm-hmm.
is by just listening,
Yeah, because
okay.
you don't actually go through that, so
I
you're
don't
helping
go through it.
listen.
No, I
Exactly.
don't go through it. But you know
Mm-hmm.
what? I can live it with them through their stories,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
okay, and then that teaches, then I become empathetic,
I was just
where
about to say you're showing empathy.
right, that I begin to feel the anger
Mm-hmm.
myself,
Mm-hmm.
okay, because I'm trying to live it in the moment through their stories.
Right.
And so, but think about this. So then I get to a point early in my career and I'm going, you know what? This is really resonating with me. So I need to make a point that the next black parent or parents that walk in here, they're going to be thinking to themselves when they see the white judge, oh my God, what's going to happen to us now?
Mm-hmm.
So it's my responsibility to greet them with a
Counter that.
smile.
Exactly.
Smile.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, welcome. Come on in here. Have a seat. My
Right.
bailiff will show you where to sit. In my tone, in my voice, and that's the respect part of procedural fairness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And here's the other thing I do. When I get done, let me just give an example. Let's take it's a plea. The kid's admitting to a delinquent offense. Okay. I have to go through all these questions of the kid. Okay. Do you understand you have the right, to remain silent, the right to deny the charges, and the right to attorney of your own choosing, yada yada yada. And then I have to ask him, has anyone made any promises or threats to get you to admit today? And I'm granting you immunity. You're not going to be in trouble if you answer this question is yes. But have you taken any illegal substances recently? Because I want to make sure that there's nothing influencing their mind. But then when I go through all of that, I always end with this. Okay. I look at the parent or the parents. Let's say it's mom there. Usually it's mom. And I ask mom, I said, now, now, Mrs. Smith said, I don't want to forget you. You're the mother. You're you're one of the most important people in this room. And I want to respect you. And I want to give you an opportunity to share anything. But I would like to start off by asking you this. First of all, do you have any questions about what your son is doing here today by admitting? Okay. And typically they say, no, the public defender did a good job explaining to me, and I agree with it. Okay. The second thing I ask is I say, well, Mrs. Doe or Mrs. Smith, every time you've been to this courthouse and you've encountered people who work with this court, including myself, do you believe that you've been treated fairly and respectfully by everyone? Okay. Now, you may be thinking initially, I'm asking that just to let her know that I care about her. And that is true.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another reason I'm doing it, which is just as important. Because all those people in that courtroom who work in this courthouse, they don't want to be the one pointed out by that mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so I create the incentive
Mm-hmm.
by asking that question, that when you encounter people from the community coming in,
Mm-hmm.
you better be nice to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That means even when they become angry,
Mm-hmm.
even when they say things that are not nice and they shouldn't have been said, remember there's a reason for everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
That's good.
reason they're like that. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. And I know an hour is just not enough time, but I want you to share a couple of laws that are parents should be aware of that they may not think are laws as it relates to juveniles. Or if we're speaking to youth, because I'm sure there's some parents who might have their children watching you this evening. Um, can you share a few laws that they should be conscious of?
Well, yeah,
They may not think about that. They may not even think are laws are relevant.
right, right. Yeah, I think some of the more simple ones that tend to be overlooked is, um, from the parent perspective, the school compulsory laws. Okay, that it is a misdemeanor that if you are not acting to ensure that your kid is attending school, then an accusation can be filed against you, and you could be placed on probation or put in jail for up to a year. Okay,
As a parent.
as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now here in Clayton County, we always do the least restrictive means. So if we identify that a kid is missing, a lot of days of school, we're going. And so what happens is we have a system where, unlike other places, instead of filing a truancy petition, the kid and family is referred to what's called the Clayton County Collaborative Child Study Team. It's something that I created by court order back in 2004. It's a multidisciplinary committee of providers, mental health, social services. It's managed by a full-time employee of mine. They actually also move around from school to school to make it convenient for the parents and the kids, all right? And they do a complete assessment to try to find out, well, why is it that Johnny or Susie is not attending school? And sometimes we find things out about the parents, okay? But rather than going after them in a punitive way, we go after them in a therapeutic way. Okay. We only have to threaten court when, they thumb their nose at us, and of course we can't walk away from that, because
Absolutely.
if we're going to talk about what's in the best interest of the kid, we got to do what we need to do,
Mm-hmm.
but I will tell you, it's been very successful. I know that I used 2019 because 2020 has just been blanked out because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not good to use data from 2020. But in 2019, I only had one truancy petition filed in my court.
That's awesome. So,
That's
so
that's how effective it is.
that's
Okay.
awesome. And so, continuing with this thought of school coming up in a few weeks and thinking about laws, what are some things? And I remember back in 2003, 2004, when we did the diversion program, violation of personal space,
Mm-hmm.
of course, shoplifting and theft and all of that. But we want to make sure that these kids are thinking, um, I don't want to violate anyone for any reason. And I know you said earlier, kids are risk takers. Their brain's frontal part of the brain is not fully developed. So we understand that. But some of the things that I just want to make sure they're thinking about, um, that they may just be playful about. And that comes to mind, the violation of personal
Well,
space.
yeah, yeah, and kids, you're absolutely right. They have trouble resolving conflict. They go to social media. They say bad things about their friends, or they get into fights, or they do the pushing and shoving, and not realize that that is a crime. Now, of course, as you know, we don't arrest kids for those things anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
we do respond to them still.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So those folks who are listening who don't live in the county, you still may be in a county that they're handcuffing kids for that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's really important now, I was interviewed on this yesterday by somebody with the Annie Casey Foundation. They're putting together a manuscript to be published by Labor Day that's going to go out to all school systems on best practices and preparing students to return to in the classroom after 1 year of closure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That we need to talk about that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And school systems need to be ready, because that in and of itself for many kids has been traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because the thing about kids is that kids are very social. They're going to school, they're connected. Well, I know kids who've had meltdowns during this pandemic. I know kids who've had suicidal ideations, who've actually committed suicide
Mm-hmm.
because they've been deprived of that social outlet that they're used to. Okay. So they've been closed up. Now we're all bringing them, all these kids who've been traumatized over the last year, back into under one roof. We better be anticipating that we're going to have some meltdowns,
We're going to have some challenges.
some challenges. So we got to be ready. How are we going to respond to it? My advice is school systems need to be right now working on creating a crisis intervention team. Okay. But the other thing they need to be doing, two other things. One is if they haven't been paying if they haven't been paying attention to school climate, what it takes to improve school climate, they better start now. And if they have been doing it, good for them, but they now need to do it on steroids.
Yes.
And school climate is about how the adults are going to treat the kids. They need to start embracing these kids. They need to start doing what I have been doing in the courtroom and what I'm telling police to do out on the streets. Start smiling, start being kinder, respectful, okay? Stop calling Johnny, who's disrupting all the time, the bad kid.
Right.
Stop
Absolutely.
doing that. Johnny's doing that for a reason. So why don't
Mhm,
you just stop for a moment and get some help and figure out why Johnny's doing what he's doing?
mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
Because what
Right.
happens, many of these kids are like this past year of this trauma. Well, even before the pandemic started, we had kids coming to school disruptive. And they were disruptive because they were living in domestic violence, drug abuse,
Homelessness.
parents, homelessness. Okay. They're angry, for God's sakes.
Hmm.
Kids don't come to school and say, "Hey, guess what, Miss Jones? My mama's getting beaten up every night."
Right.
They're not going to share that, but
No
they are sharing it. You know how they do it? Because
behavior.
because that's right. Their uh, anger, their disruptive behavior becomes their language.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're expressing their anger,
Hmm.
and so we need to hit the pause button, and we need to start listening to our kids who are disruptive.
Hmm.
And so that's why we should be thinking about crisis intervention teams and school climate, but we also need to do this for teachers. We ask a lot of teachers, okay? And we need to start creating an outlet for them because
Absolutely.
if we want them to create healthy relationships with our kids, we need to make sure they are healthy emotionally. And working with some very disruptive kids and what we're asking them to do to be patient, that's a lot. And I'm going to tell you what they're doing up in Northwest, I think it's the state of Washington. So they've taken restorative justice, this thing called peace circles. Okay. I don't have time to go into it right now. We only have about 7 minutes left, but they're applying it to teachers. So every week, the teacher gets every teacher, they rotate it during the day, but they schedule it so there's 50 minutes where teachers come together in a group and they have the talking stick and somebody facilitates and they just and there's no supervisors, no assistant, principal or
Hmm.
principal, anyone
Hmm.
is what's said in that room stays in that
Stays
room.
in that room.
And they then now have a venue of outlet. And it can maybe something like, I'm dealing with this kid Johnny, and they go, oh, and
Hmm.
Johnny's da 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 da, and I just need help with Johnny da 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 da, and the other, so the facilitator may take the talking stick and give it to Mr. So and so. So, well, how would you help her? You have any
Right.
suggestions for her? You know,
Absolutely.
so now there's this dedicate, but it's not just that; it's just being able to say, I I don't know what to do with
Right.
Johnny. I
Right.
just got to share this, y'all. He's driving me crazy
Without a penalty,
without a penalty.
because we're expecting you to be able to cope, but
Right.
you may not be able to based on what is actually happening in that classroom and what's happening in your life,
Right. Because
because
I
life
guarantee
happens to teachers.
that's right. I guarantee you that teacher is going to be less likely to blow up with Johnny. It's
Mhm.
going to be more patient just knowing that she's getting to talk about Johnny
Exactly.
to her
Exactly.
peers.
Exactly. That I love that idea. I love it. I've done that in sessions before, and it's so helpful, particularly in my parenting classes. And so it helps everybody
Yeah.
in the room, even those ones who are quiet and shy. They're
Yeah.
still going to get something from that conversation. So it's never enough time. So we're going to have to do a part two. I know you're
Sounds good to
retiring.
me.
We're going to
That's
have to do
fine.
a part two, but I want you to give a piece of advice. We only have 5 minutes. I want you to
Yeah.
share a piece of advice to the audience, whether it's a parent, a teacher, a police officer, whomever, something that you would like to share with them as it relates to helping youth stay out of trouble or coping with our youth when they may be in trouble.
Well, first of all, let me say, how do we? how do we check on our children and how do we try to prevent them from getting in trouble? And so, parents, I want you to know that the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution does not apply to your household. Okay? It doesn't apply to you, it applies to police officers. All right? Your kids are not your friends, they're your kids. And that means you can go through their drawers, go through their closet, look under their beds. That's what I did.
What I
Even when my
did.
and you know what? My kids never gave me any suspicion,
Hmm.
but I did it anyway. And
Hmm.
maybe the reason they didn't give me any suspicions because I did it anyway.
Right. They knew it was coming.
Yes, yes. Okay, so that's the preventative thing.
Hmm.
Well, the other part of the preventative thing is to talk. Force yourself to make time, even if for just 10 minutes, to force your child to sit down with you. And even like Shenita says, here's the icebreaker. Maybe the icebreaker could be well, tell me what happened at school today.
Hmm.
Tell me about school. How you doing in school? Who are your friends? I mean, make up a whole bunch of questions, break them up over, but do this every day.
And they can find those questions online.
Yeah, yeah,
Family meeting,
abs-
10-minute
abs-
family meeting or huddle.
right. When growing up, we had Taco Tuesday. Okay, you
Talk on
know,
Tuesday with
yeah, we
tacos.
that's right, absolutely. They love Daddy's tacos.
Hmm.
Okay, now if you're dealing with a kid that's challenging, this is where this is the most difficult advice. Okay, to accept, and that is the world's not coming to an end.
Hmm.
Most kids age out of their unruliness and delinquency. Okay,
Just got to
you're
hold
not
on.
right. By the way, there's really nothing you're going to say that's going to change things.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, but you need to continue loving them. All right. Now, loving them doesn't mean that they still get to do what they want to do, because that's why they're being unruly, probably, is because you're not letting them do what they want to do.
Mhm.
All right. So that part doesn't change, but it's how you deliver it that's important. You know,
I'm a witness.
yeah, yeah,
I didn't do it so well when my kids were young.
yeah. Well,
I'm a witness to that truth.
yeah, you know, and it's something that see, but that doesn't, but Shanita, that doesn't make you a bad parent, though.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
you know, you know, the bad parent is the one who's doing drugs with their kids. Okay, all right, you know, you know, none of us are perfect.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
and so yeah, we make mistakes. I made mistakes. I look back and I regret
Mhm.
some things that I did or I didn't do.
Mhm.
Okay, all
Mhm.
right. So you know, but I think the important thing is as I close here is open up, talk to other people. Okay, you know, just like and lastly, as a way of analogy, Shanita, that you have a group or are involved in a group, okay, for spouses who've lost spouses.
Mhm.
Same thing for parents.
Mhm.
Find other parents, both parents that have had unmanageable kids, have unmanageable kids, or do not. Talk
Mhm.
to them all. Create that support system for yourself.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I love it. I love. I just love everything that you've shared. You know how much I love and respect and appreciate you.
Well, it's
And
mutual.
so we're gonna have to do part two soon.
Yes.
I know it might be on the other side of retirement, but I'm excited for you and Cheryl as you prepare for your new journey in life away from the bench.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just want to thank you again for taking time to share with us tonight. And as always, peace, love, and blessings to you and to you all in the audience. Thank you for tuning in. Please join us next week. Remember, I love you, but God loves you most. He loves you best. Peace,
Amen.
love, and joy to you all. Thank you, Judge Teske.
Love you, Shanita. You
Love you
be
too.
safe. Okay.
Thank you. Take
All
care.
right. Bye now. You too.
Bye bye.